Welcome to the Upshot, Multi-World Disc Golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I'm the editor, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me back for 2024 in the new year, finally away from his vacation, taking time away from the pod. I can't believe it. It's Thursday, January 4th, and I'm joined by Josh Mansfield. Josh, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. It's good to be back. We got the gang back together. And it's so funny because you look back and honestly, we did most of the shows together because we pre-recorded so many of them.
I know.
But we've hardly talked for the past couple months. So it's nice to be back. I'm excited to get things going again. It's going to be a good 2024.
Are you feeling energized about disc golf in 2024?
Yeah, I think so. I am. You asked me that, and I sat there and I'm like, oh yeah, things in 2024 are happening. Besides the fact that I have a kid coming in 2 months. Okay, I gotta reorient myself around that. No, I am excited for disc golf. I think it's going to be good. I'm particularly excited about some of the scheduling changes that I think are going to be good. Right, like I'm excited about the European events. There are a couple of things that I'm excited to see. I'm excited about the Houston tournament. And so there's some things I'm looking forward to. I think there's some kind of some questions that carried over in terms of players and performance from last season. And we're going to talk about that today. So I'm excited.
Well, we're going to get into our 2024 predictions a little bit later in the show. Put some cards on the table. What do we think is going to happen in 2024? It feels like there's been so much that has happened in disc golf over the last 3 years that how could there possibly be a ton more news this year? And I in some ways, if I have an overarching prediction before we get to that segment, it's that things aren't going to be so crazy this year. It's going to feel like a year where everything is just sort of normalized. The tour schedule gets kind of more sensible. There's not gigantic seismic changes in, the business side of disc golf. It's going to be people kind of being okay, we're through this growth phase. Let's start taking the steps forward to continue on a sustainable growth path for the sport.
Yeah.
And so that is my prediction, is that it's not going to be too insane.
Okay. All right.
But we'll get to the full actual predictions in a little bit. Josh, as you know, lots of sponsorship stuff going on.
Yep.
And we're in the little weird zone again. Companies have figured out that if you drop all the news on January 1st, you get caught up in the noise of all of it. So now we have to wait. We don't know where Gannon's going yet.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't heard anything about Eagle. Niklas is still a question mark. And so we're waiting to find out what happens with these big free agents. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about each of them in turn.
Okay.
Gannon Buhr. We know he's gone from Prodigy. He made a nice little joke in his Instagram with all of the slogans from the big companies anyway. Yep. Where do you think he lands?
I would probably my bet is between two places. Number one, I think Latitude 64, we've seen some drop-offs of some of their mid-tier players and no high-profile signings. And I think Gannon makes a lot of sense to sign with Latitude 64. He doesn't have necessarily the European recognition, but with the expansion of the European tour, I think it would be very easy for Latitude 64 to say, welcome to Latitude 64. You're spending 3 months in Europe this summer, or 2 months in Europe, right? And you're going to play every elite event in Europe this summer. And I think with a little bit of work, Gannon could be an immensely popular European among the European fans.
Continue. Okay. I have thoughts, but I continue.
That's pick number one. It takes some work. It takes some branding, but I'm trying to remember, I think it was you that said it, but it may have been Brian on Tuesday's show, that it's a young player who goes from a rising star to a powerhouse player. That rebranding could include a European element. It would take some work, but I think he's got a real potential there. My second pick, Discmania. He was originally connected to Discmania back last year. I don't see any reason why Discmania would have backed out of that unless another company came forward with a substantially larger offer that just Discmania didn't want to match. They lost Niklas Anttila. They are a prime candidate to bring on someone like Gannon after Simon and Niklas both leaving.
And that's the point that I think rules out Latitude. I think that if we saw Discmania retain Niklas and Eagle, which we'll get to Eagle in a second, but I think he gone. I think he gone from Discmania. And there's purported screenshots of a now private YouTube video of him leaving that announces leaving. Now, like, only one person on Reddit has actually seen said private YouTube video link. So, like, maybe it's fake, but I don't know. There's been a lot of rumors going for a long time now that he is gone. So if Discmania loses Eagle and Niklas, they are going to be very motivated to go after a player we already knew that they were heavily interested in and throw a giant contract at him. Because if they do not do that and they lose those guys, well, is this Kyle Klein's brand now? No disrespect to Kyle Klein. Very good player. Could still rise to be better than Gannon. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is totally plausible. The problem is it just doesn't feel like he has that spark that you're looking for as like the main guy at your brand. So I think Discmania, because we know that they wanted to pick him up last year and that connection has been there, I think that they're going to come in and match or exceed any offer that Gannon gets from another company. And Gannon is in the perfect spot to be one of the guys who really gets paid this offseason after, in a year where a lot of people aren't getting the big money.
I think the other thing that Gannon really benefits from, he was originally planning to sign with Discmania. That comes off of his USDGC win. And, he's an perfect time to sign, right? Go win the last major of the season and then go try and sign a big contract. But, I mean, we've seen players win majors and then, or at least win tournaments and get contracts and not really do much with them afterwards and kind of fall off.
I just don't see it with Gannon.
Well, he backed it up this season.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like he backed it up and came out and won 3 more events. And that if you're Discmania makes you go, wow, okay, great. Like, give him the 5, give him the 8-year deal. If Gannon will take it.
I think he's got a good head on his shoulders. He clearly has an immense skill.
Yes.
I think he's still positioned as the best player for the next 15 years. You know, like if you had to pick one player to bet your chips on for the next 15 years.
You get one buy in the stock pick game.
Yeah.
Most of us are taking Gannon.
So I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. All right, let's talk about Eagle. I mean, obviously there are still other people who could pick up Gannon. Like
there are.
I think Innova would still make a lot of sense, but I just think Discmania is going to be really motivated to meet any necessary monetary amount to make it happen. Eagle. It's not 100% certain that he's leaving Discmania. He had a video come out with him doing an unboxing about a week ago of the new mystery box. But I mean, the rumors continue to pile up. There's screenshots of a video that is now private on YouTube. Real or fake, you tell me. I mean, I just think the fact that there's been no announcement that he's staying is also gets concerning at this point. There's just a lot of small things that accumulate for me to make me think he's probably leaving.
Yeah.
And now, Josh, the MVP rumors have continued to climb. And when I first heard it, I was like, this sounds like fanboy, fever dream.
Right.
Oh my God, Simon and Eagle back together at MVP. And I'm like, I mean, they just already spent huge money to get Simon. Getting another A1 player, it just doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. But the more that I continue to hear the rumors, the more I'm thinking about whether it does in fact maybe make sense, given that MVP had such a good year. Do you buy this?
I did. I'm with you. At first, I was like, "There's just no chance. There's no chance." And it also, it doesn't make sense. We talked about it so much in the season, for Discmania to let Eagle walk as well feels crazy.
I think it's a Simon situation. If that's how it went down, I'm sure they were willing to pay him a lot of money.
Which how much money then is MVP going to throw another 10-year, $10 million at Eagle?
That I don't know.
But
like maybe they feel like they're seeing enough ROI from Simon already, and like it would be an enormous power move.
It would be
for them to get Eagle. And I'll come back to this in my predictions later, but go ahead.
Here's what I'm going to say on the 4 side. Why I think it might happen. It seems like the disc golf community, especially when Reddit picks up on it, the buzz later in the year and beginning into New Year's is usually right.
It's usually right.
It's been the case with AB to Discraft. I remember was like this.
Simon to MVP.
Simon to MVP was right. Right. There are Ricky leaving, like that buzz.
The only thing they missed on, and this was a while ago now, was Macbeth to Discraft. I don't really think that people knew that one was coming.
I don't think so either. Granted, I wasn't as in tune to the subreddit at that time either.
Different world.
Yeah. So, but lately, as of the past 2 years, I would say the subreddit is good, and the buzz of the subreddit is usually right. So that's kind of in favor. Number 2, that like, man, whoever made that video, if it's a fake, did a great job. they did a really thorough job making that fake video. So that also makes me inclined to think that's the case. The reason that I'm hesitant on the MVP talk is that when Simon was going to MVP, we were getting emails from people who claimed to have the inside scoop, and it was just random listeners, right? Like, but who had some connection, who knew a guy, but they were right? And that happened. We found out about, like, started hearing about Ricky to DD about a week before we started, and that got leaked. Simon was very much like we were hearing at least emails and people saying so. I haven't seen any of that from Eagle. Nobody has written in and said, oh yeah, like, I know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy who works at MVP and knows the Eagle is coming.
I think that also, though, is a sign of how things have changed. Like, there's like NDAs on this stuff now.
You think it's just
yeah, I think it's much more locked down.
Okay. And that may be the case, but I mean, like, you had the Chris Clemens with the van at Discraft, and you've got
That's true.
There, no matter how hard you try and like button this down, leaks are usually coming out.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard any leaks of any kind from Eagle and about Eagle's story. And that's the one that raises question marks to me.
But we haven't heard leaks in any other direction either, is the thing. It's not like we've heard leaks that he's staying or that he's going to Innova or that, you know, whatever. I'm just
it makes me think that maybe it's not done.
Well, maybe. I would be surprised if stuff wasn't done at this point. Or if it's not done, it's like 90% done and the lawyers are figuring out the last little bit. The case for MVP doing it is that it's like, we spend this marketing money now. Even if we give him a long run deal, the growth of the sport is going to allow us to grow into paying off this contract long run. And I mean, they can't keep this on the shelves right now.
Right, I mean, that's true.
And I'll come back to some MVP like sales stat stuff, because they have just been far and away, like, Simon has just boomed them from an already growing base to just like huge acceleration. Mm-hmm. And like, to take that momentum and then be like, boom, we just got another player. We reunite the Crush Boys. I mean, does Discmania even own that IP?
It's a great question.
The lawyers are going to find out. But like, maybe they come up with a new nickname for the two of them.
Sure.
I just feel like it would be a kind of move that we'll look back on and say, that's when MVP made it.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. How about Niklas? I've seen weird speculation that his post was actually not him leaving Discmania, that he's actually being upgraded to a higher team on Discmania. That is completely implausible to me. That seems like total nonsense.
That would have been shut down so fast if that's true. Like that, Niklas would have come out and been like, I got hacked. This is not real. Don't listen to this.
I have a kind of I have a suspicion.
Okay. All right. What's your
This is not really. I mean, maybe people are talking about this, but I haven't seen this around too much. I think Discraft makes a run at Niklas.
Interesting. Okay. I want to hear the case because I don't agree.
The case is simple.
Okay.
Macbeth last year went to Discraft and said, "Hey, I want to go to Europe and like do a long Europe tour."
Yep.
And so Discraft gets this opportunity, and like Macbeth is basically the first guy to do that, right? As like a top professional.
Yeah. Yeah.
He skips meaningful tournaments in the US to go play
Yep.
A tiers in Europe. And so they get this little moment where all of a sudden they have like their highest profile player in Europe for an extended time getting a lot of press and notice from the European continent. Discraft, not a major brand in Europe. But I bet they saw their sales go up a lot in Europe over the last year because of Macbeth. And I think they're saying to themselves, we could make a move here and pick up a top European player and really try to make some inroads into a place where basically the European brands and Prodigy rule. And a little bit, Innova has a lot of sponsored players in Europe as well. Discraft is not really focused on the European market that much. This would be the perfect opportunity to sign probably the best player in Europe.
Yeah. Counterpoint. You take Niklas's sponsorship money and you just pay Macbeth to keep going to Europe, and he sells more discs than Niklas does in Europe. Like that's. I see your point. But Macbeth has already expressed a very strong interest in continuing over in Europe. He's an advocate of the European tour. I could see why they would do it, but to my brain, I feel send Macbeth. Let Macbeth go do it.
So where does he go then? I get your point.
Here's my take. I think he goes to Prodigy. Prodigy is already they have the European presence, right? They just lost a lot of young players. They've got some room. You've got Kevin Jones. You got Isaac Robinson. You add Niklas onto it.
But this would be a Prodigy Europe play, right?
It would be Prodigy Europe play, yes.
They already have Vino. Isn't it duplicative?
Lock it down. I mean, it's like saying is having Simon and Eagle duplicative. Like market them together, run them together. If you are, here's the thing. If you have Prodigy Europe and you want to create the corner and be the biggest European powerhouse, the number one thing that you could do is have the first European MPO major winner in modern disc golf. So sign Niklas, sign Vino. It's probably going to be one of those two guys. And then whichever one wins, you win.
I don't know. I do think Niklas is the most likely person to be the first, like as of right now, to be the first MPO major winner from Europe. Or what, Worlds winner, right?
I think that there's been a major...
There have been some European major winners, but not Worlds.
Modern, yeah. USDGC or...
Sure.
Yeah.
I think, though, that there's such an enormous crop of up-and-coming talent that I would still say the odds of it not being Niklas first are higher.
Ooh, interesting.
Like, look at all these players we saw at the European Open, for instance.
You're
so impressive.
And you're absolutely right. I think that banks on the fact that you think no one's going to do it this year.
Yeah, probably.
Right? Like that's what it is. It banks on, you're like, this. It's not going to happen this year. It's not going to happen until Worlds or European Open next year when you've got the double majors in Europe. Because that's honestly the most likely time for that to happen.
I definitely agree.
So you need it to not happen in the next 5 majors. That's what you're saying.
Anyway, Prodigy would make sense.
So Prodigy's my pick.
And Innova's always in the conversation.
Right.
I think the idea that he's going to get like shifted over to Latitude 64,
it feels weird.
I don't know if that would. I don't really see why that would happen.
I don't either.
Like that would only make sense to me if you're like already retaining other like key players at Discmania, but it doesn't feel like that's what's happening. So interesting stuff. Okay, final thing here. Macy Vela Diaz, we know, announced that, Dynamic Discs announced that Macy Vela Diaz would not be returning to their team in 2024. She recently announced that she is pregnant, and she actually posted on Facebook and said, I just wanted to shed some light on the recent announcement that I will no longer be representing DD. Jamie, her husband, and I found out I was pregnant a few days after the Pro Tour Championships. At this time, I had been approached by a few other companies, but after discussing with Jamie, we decided staying with DD would probably be for the best, since I had been with them for 3 years already. Before I had posted or announced I was pregnant, DD sent their first offer to me for next year. After feeling like I had played a good season, their offer wasn't what I had expected, but that's neither here nor there. After a phone call with my team managers, I let them know I was pregnant. I told them I had talked to my doctor and decided on playing 10 tournaments next year, 9 Pro Tours, and an All-Star event. We discussed what would be the best route, considering I wasn't playing a full tour. Our next time talking, they sent me a different offer, which was unfortunately too low for us to travel. After looking over it, I decided to step away and look elsewhere. Regardless of the current situation, thank you for taking a chance on me 3 years ago, blah, blah, blah. Currently don't have a sponsor since it's a little late in the year to negotiate with companies, considering most teams have finished picking up new players to their team. We'll see what God has in store for me next year. What do you make of this, Josh?
I think this is playing out exactly what you and Brian talked about on the pod on Tuesday, is that the ROI of mid-level players is becoming apparent in the post-COVID era to not, like, there is not a high enough ROI for mid-level players. And because of that, especially a mid-level player who's not playing a full tour, like Macy's is one of the first who's recognizing that if you're not the best, then it's going to be very difficult to earn the kind of contracts that we saw over the past 2 to 3 years, right? She couldn't just walk up to DD and say, I think I deserve a contract like Kristen Tatar and get for a year $500,000. Like gone is that era for now. And
Market top.
And look, Macy is a good player who at the end of the day was very infrequently relevant when it came to tournaments, because Kristen was the best, and then you had Owen and Missy and Kat and Kat Merch, so you Katrina Allen and Kat Merch and Paige and Macy's name doesn't even come in to the top 5 conversation. I don't remember where. Let's take a quick look where she finished in the Pro Tour standings.
She only had, I got it for you. She was 10th in the Pro Tour standings, but she only had 3 top 10 finishes this year.
Brutal. Like, that's, she won a silver event.
Yeah, back at Lake Marshall.
At Lake Marshall in the previous
fall,
year.
Like nobody was paying attention to that.
She had the second at Music City Open, but kind of an ugly second where she had like the fight about the spot where she said she crossed the water.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I don't think that won her any fans. And so I don't think that, it's not surprising to me that Macy is suffering from this cut that you and Brian talked about, that I think a lot of players are starting to feel the pressure on. I will say, I think this is one of the more honest posts about sponsorship and contract negotiation that we've seen. You don't see that very often. It typically happens behind the scenes. I like seeing what's going on in the negotiations. I don't know how that fares for her, though. So that's my take.
I think it's interesting that you take the approach. It's like, well, tough luck. Like, you didn't earn a big contract here, because there's like a lot of other things going on, right? So like Dee, she feels like she gets lowballed. Then she tells them that she's pregnant. She's not going to play as much. And then they reduce their offer. And she's like, this isn't even worth it. I'm out. So to me, there's like a bunch of things going on. Number one is DD cost cutting.
Yep.
Makes sense. They're on the hook for these big deals that probably aren't really paying off. And
now they have a corporate company that's...
And like, let's be honest, this is bad PR for DD. Right?
And that's true.
To be like, your player tells you they're pregnant and you're like, okay, we'll cut our offer. But let's recognize, this is not an employment agreement. This is not you're pregnant and we're firing you, which is like illegal if you're fire an employee for telling you they're pregnant or for taking their leave. But this is a sponsorship arrangement. This is a 1099. This is not the same thing. So I think, like, some people are like, well, Macy just shouldn't have told them. She should have signed the deal and then told them. But like, that's dishonest too.
It is.
I saw somebody on Reddit basically make the point that like if their marketing people were smart on both sides, like they could have made a really cool thing here where you like start marketing that Macy's pregnant and it's like you make like little pink and blue minis and blah blah blah, and like yeah, there probably is an opportunity to do that, but I just this feels like there was like bad communication on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think you can't expect a brand to just like pony up and pay a player because of goodwill. And like, it is reasonable to consider that like, if you're not going to play a full tour and you're only going to play half the season, which of course makes sense, that the company isn't going to want to pay you as much. So I do think this is a chance for another company to like sign Macy Veladiaz, who is a very good player and could very well in the future be an asset, to a deal, you know, maybe a multi-year deal where like you take into account the pregnancy. But I feel bad for Macy, who's like now doesn't have a sponsor, like as of like a day or two ago. Hopefully somebody steps in and like acknowledges that like it's not like Macy Veladiaz doesn't have the capacity to be a tour winner. She is definitely good enough to win.
See, and that's where I think I struggle. I mean, she's 10th in the Pro Tour standings. She did have the second place. But like you mentioned, what, 3 top 10s?
It was 4. I missed
4
one.
four top 10s. And just a group of young players that are coming up behind her that are just immensely talented. I don't think the ceiling is that high on Macy Veladiaz. And so the problem is, like, I agree with all you're saying about the PR, but let's say they sign her to the deal, they pay just as much, and they do the whole thing with it. And you know, the blue and the pink minis, like I would want, what's Macy Veladiaz's disc sales up till now? I don't think
yeah,
right?
I don't think she's a player that's moving a lot of plastic.
I don't think she is either, and I don't think that drastically changes because you run a baby campaign with it either.
Yeah,
and so that's my struggle. If there was a player who I think was already moving plastic, this becomes a very interesting opportunity in like that PR and marketing. This is like, it doesn't look great for DD. But I also, and maybe another player, but even if in the case you have like people who support brands because they feel like they like do good things, right? Like, and they're good people. And so if a brand were to pick up Macy Veladiaz, I think there would be a non-zero number of people who would buy that brand's discs because of their goodwill in signing.
People also can recognize that, like, hey, I like Macy Veladiaz and she's pregnant and she's going to have to take time off the tour and not make money. So like, I'll buy her disc.
Yeah, maybe. And that might be the case.
Yeah.
It's a lot of ifs, and
yeah,
it's a lot of ROI that I'm having a hard time seeing.
All right, last thing quick. Discraft. Been a little quiet. Probably, you know, maybe they're picking, maybe going to make a signing like Niklas. That's my speculation. But we also haven't heard, you know, Missy Gannon was up for a renewal. Haven't heard anything. Paige Pierce up for a contract renewal. Haven't heard anything.
Yeah.
Now, I'll just say, I don't think either of those players is going anywhere. They're still, Discraft is still selling their merch on the website. So I think we're just kind of waiting for the announcement. But I'm curious, like, what are we going to hear about Paige's new deal? Does she get a worse deal than she had previously?
Yeah.
I feel like Paige's value probably feels like it's down a little bit from where it was when she signed the deal originally.
Yeah, probably. My big thing with Discraft is that they like to make their videos. And I think this was how it was last year, as we were like, everybody had announced, and we were like a month later, Discraft was finally like, oh yeah, okay, here's our video. We got a team, by the way, because we waited forever for like the Anthony Barella news. Remember, like, so
yes,
it feels weird, but it also just kind of what I expect out of Discraft these days, and I'm not too concerned about it. So,
all right, well, we were going to talk about the Stat Mando acquisition by the PDGA, but we're going to do that in our subscriber bonus segment Inside the Circle. So we'll ask you to join us for that. We're going to talk about the acquisition itself and maybe like, why did the PDGA make this acquisition and what could it mean for the future of stats and data in disc golf? So become a subscriber today to Ultiworld Disc Golf. go to discgolf.ultiworld.com/subscribe. Join up for less than $4 a month. And join our Discord. It's a great place to talk disc golf and get our live bonus segments after every tournament on Sunday nights and all of the other bonus episodes that we do here on the Upshot. When we come back, 2024 predictions coming your way.
At Pound, the quality of our gear runs deeper than the stitching. That's why we make everything right here in the U.S., employing highly skilled, well-paid professionals. From bomb-proof Cordura fabric to YKK zippers and recycled plastics, we source the highest quality U.S. materials to make the most comfortable, durable pack in disc golf. Our lifetime warranty stays with the pack, not the purchaser. So regardless of how you find us, we will be here to make sure your pack stays on the course and out of the landfill. Pound's integrity is held together with more than just thread.
Welcome back to the Upshot. It is time to make some 2024 predictions. We're going to do our major picks in maybe a month or so before the season starts. We'll get our official preseason major predictions on paper, but this is more about big picture disc golf stuff. On course, business side, whatever you got. Josh, I'll let you go first.
Okay. I'm going to take one that I think is the least controversial of my picks, which might say a lot about my picks. I think another minor brand is going to get acquired by a large manufacturer. Minor brand. I use the brand. We talked about this before, right? Brand is a word that we use intentionally to indicate a disc company that doesn't produce their own discs, right?
So you're saying it would be a manufacturer acquiring a company that
they already
doesn't make its
manufacture
own
for.
frisbees.
Yes.
Okay.
So for example, Innova acquires Infinite, right?
That would be insane, but yes.
Crazy, unlikely. I think that's the
brand.
least likely. Right. So,
but I get your point.
A brand acquisition is the best way I should probably put that, right? A brand that does not manufacture their own discs gets acquired by their parent manufacturer, and it becomes a singular company. That is my prediction. I think it is the most likely form of consolidation that continues to occur. Now that like the Trilogy brands and Discmania are all kind of tidied up under House of Discs. So I would expect then a company that manufactures for another company is going to acquire that little baby company. And maybe it's not that baby, right? Maybe it's...
By the way, ThoughtSpace, they just like keep signing players.
With Infinite. It's interesting.
And remember, MVP makes most of ThoughtSpace's discs.
Right. So like that's a case, right? Maybe MVP acquires ThoughtSpace.
Do they make more money acquiring them or just continuing to make frisbees for them and sell them to them at wholesale?
I think it's going to be out at what I really think would occur is that a company like ThoughtSpace, for example, begins to struggle in like the slowdown, right? I think that one of these brands has outgrown its capacity in the slightly contracted or like they overprojected growth for their brand and overinvested in equipment and personnel. And the easiest way is to go to their manufacturer and be like, please just acquire us.
Bail us out.
Bail us out. Yeah. And they get them at a pretty good price.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely could see that.
Yeah.
I definitely could see that. I'll take my least controversial pick.
Okay.
Is this even too boring to be a prediction? But no, I mean, I still want to say it.
Okay.
Kristen Tatar is going to dominate FPO again. Dominate.
Okay.
Crushing year once again. I basically am selling the idea that Paige is going to come back and be a major player.
Okay.
Not that she's going to be good. I bet what Paige will win a tournament this year.
Okay.
But I think Kristen will still be the far and away clear number one and just continue her reign at the top of the division.
All right, I've got a prediction that I'm just going to pair along nicely with it, but I'm going to go bigger. I'm going to say Kristen repeats the sweep.
Wow. I didn't even have the cojones to go there.
Here's why. If you really truly think Kristen's going to continue to dominate at the level that she did, then at that point, there's no reason to see any kind of major performance drop off. You would require players who come up to Kristen's level in order to do so. But I think it goes in with a sense of like it's done, right? The sweep is done. This is just icing on the cake now, right? If she does it again, I mean, yes, that's incredible, but I think there's just less pressure for it.
That's true, but it's just so hard.
It is hard. But she is the best player in the biggest moments and has been, and has just been like far and away the best player. And so
no doubt.
If you think Kristen can continue to dominate, then I do.
How'd she play at Northwood Black? Did she?
She didn't play.
She didn't play Ledgestone.
She didn't play Ledgestone.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah,
that's going to be interesting.
But I mean,
Missy's so good there. I think is Missy the number one challenger next year?
Feels like it.
I mean, that's what we saw this past season.
We did. Yeah.
Or is Paige going to come back and be the what just return to what she was?
It's hard to see.
It's hard to see.
That's hard.
I agree. I don't know. The layoff, getting married.
Yeah.
I just don't know if I see that she's going to refine that form. I hope so. It would be so awesome.
I hope so too. But like Katrina's weird season end, there's a lot of just question marks that I think are still unresolved in FPO around the biggest players. And so given that that's the case, I don't see any reason why Kristen doesn't just keep powerhousing.
All right. My next prediction has to do with the growth of the sport. I got the year-end membership numbers from the PDGA.
Okay.
Thank you to Danny Voss over at the PDGA for sending those over to me this morning. Year-end, 136,636 active PDGA members in 2023. That is up about 6,000 from the year end of 2022, a 4.47% increase. So up a little under 5% from a year ago. Just a fun fact, the last PDGA number awarded this year was number 275,649. So almost certainly someone will get that 300K probably this year, but maybe in 2 years. So I want to point out that, that percentage increase is well down from where it's been the last 3 years.
Shocker.
Well, I mean, right. It just tracks with everything we've seen.
It does.
Renewals were a little bit down in September, right? The last data that we have publicly. There'll be the full demographic report and whatnot. But renewals were like starting to look a little bit under pressure. New disc golfers coming in still at a good rate, but not the kind of crazy growth we've seen.
Right.
And this is what we saw kind of in the sport in general, like marginal growth at best.
There's also some complaints around like the PDGA, given like the Natalie Ryan stuff and other things that have made people, for like both reasons, not want to renew from what I've seen. And like they're like already were on the fence and did it because they don't play that many tournaments anymore. They're getting busier, but they continue to support it. And then they like didn't really see a reason to. And so I think that also contributed a little bit to slowing of those renewals.
Yeah, I wonder whether that's like has a real tangible impact, because I think like if you're just a fan who doesn't really care that much one way or the other, it's still a good value, because if you want to watch DGN, like 50, the discount makes it worth it.
That's true.
So I don't know. I think this is the best proxy we have for sport growth.
Yes.
And will probably continue to be so. Okay, so what's my actual prediction here? I am predicting that membership growth rate will go up in 2024. That we've gone through the like giant boom and then like the kind of like lull below the normal trend. Mm-hmm. And now we're going to go back up to like the 8 to 12% range in terms of growth, if I had to like actually specify a number. So I am not betting on decline in 2024. I think that, there's just the general overall trend of disc golf with more courses in the ground, more money in the sport, more businesses being started, the just awesome stuff that's going on in Europe right now, I think we see continued growth and more growth than we saw in 2023.
All right. I like the optimism. And I actually have a prediction that I think is going to go nicely here. That also is an increase in optimism. I want to point out, so let me give my take. I think disc sales are going to increase again from 2023. There was kind of the plateau, like the decline. People quit buying as many discs. You can go over to the fandom survey and see how those numbers compared to 2022. And it's pretty clear that people were not buying discs at the same mark that they were in previous years. I think that's going to start going back up. And I think that's the case for a couple of reasons. Number one, in terms of growth and optimism around the sports growth as a whole, we also went over to our disc golf subreddit and checked that as just another proxy, essentially, for kind of interest and growth in the sport. As of the January 1st number from the past 5 years now, including this year, 2024, 2020, 89,000 people were subscribed to the subreddit. 2021 was 132,000. 2022 was 182,000. 2023 was 225,000. And now in January 2024, 261,000 subscribers to the subreddit disc golf. It is a top 1% subreddit, which is pretty exciting. That number continues to increase, right? At the somewhere between high 30s to high 40s mark year over year. And while the percentage of growth decreases because the number is getting larger, the number of people actually joining has stayed pretty consistent over the past 5 years, including into 2024. And I think that's encouraging. And there are plenty of people who talk about their wanting to buy discs in that subreddit, right? It's a place that more so than even the PDGA, I think encourages kind of that commercialization, talks about the hot new releases. The second thing, I think that people's optimism around the economy is started to go back up.
True.
Gas prices are going down. There's less talk, and there's been some moves in order to try and bring prices of other commodities, groceries down. And people, I think, are starting to feel at least the effects of starting to feel the effects of that. But my sense from like the political side of things I follow, optimism around the economy is starting to increase, and the fear of a recession is going down. I think people spend, we've talked about this. People spend more of their discretionary income when they're not as concerned about the economy. I also think that we saw going into the tail end of this year some changes in the way before. I mean, disc companies would just stick players' names on popular molds and just sell them out. I've been seeing some changes in the way that disc releases are coming. They're rebranding not just popular discs, but like Discraft went through and had each tour player pick one of their least sold or most least niche discs in their bag, and they released it as a mini tour series. That's something that's very different. It's creating sales. The Zone Battle Pack, I thought, was a brilliant piece of marketing to increase disc sales. I think disc companies are not taking for granted the fact that they can just put a disc out and it will sell. And that also to me makes it feel like a disc increase is coming.
Here's the interesting potential factor in this.
Okay.
Could we see disc prices go down? Now, this is not something that in a way they already have, because you're seeing more discs available on discount, right. On like mystery boxes were big again this year after kind of being less present a year ago, or like when there were just no discs available. It's been easier for stores to get discs. And I was curious, so I looked it up. Plastics Material Price Index. Okay. Take a look at the chart. It's pretty flat for like a long time. Like 2015 to 2020, pretty much flat. Then we get the pandemic and prices dip, and then they go soaring along with basically every other commodity, right. Lumber, coffee, you name it, goes soaring during the inflationary period up into, 2021, 2022. And it topped out in June 2022 and has been steadily declining since, back towards a higher low, but like, approximately prices have gone down like probably looks like 30% or so. And that's just like for raw plastics, right? I mean, I don't know specifically which plastics the companies are buying, but I think it's gotten cheaper. Shipping has gotten cheaper. All of these things, right? So a lot of these supply chain issues have been resolved.
Yeah.
And so the cost of manufacturing a Frisbee is lower than it was 18 months ago. Do we see that get reflected in prices in order to encourage more disc buying? I mean, a lot of times once prices reach a certain level, they don't really go back down, right? That's what happens. Like they're just high forever. But I think there's enough stock on shelves right now that we could see prices start to, we might see a company come out and be like, we're doing it. Base plastic putters, we're going back to $8.99, baby.
Gosh.
And like they make it like a selling point, and they want people to be excited about like a lower price disc. And like I think that it's supported from a cost of goods sold perspective.
Great point. Great additional point.
Okay, next one for me. I'm just going to go back to the course thing.
Okay.
Calvin is going to win a major this year. Now I predicted it last year. I had him on my picks for the majors, but like I want to just stick my neck out. He's going to do it. He's going to get over the hump. The haters are going to, and Josh, you're going to just poof into smoke when it happens. I think he finally gets it done. There's just no way this guy's not going to win one. He's too good.
Hey, Charlie, do you want to make a wager on this?
Let's go.
Here's my wager.
Do we still have, we have an ongoing one, right? James Conrad.
That was just for last season.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
New one. Here we go.
I will say I'm not confident enough that I'm not going to bet a trip to New York on this season. but I'm not putting up my foil player this season. Instead, I'm going to make this offer. If Calvin wins a major in the 2025 Super Bowl, whoever is playing, my kiddo will be wearing a 49ers onesie. If Calvin does not win a major, whoever is playing, your kiddo, Lewis, is wearing a Denver Broncos onesie.
People will be like, why is he wearing a non-playoff team jersey?
You're going to have to post a picture. We're going to have to show a picture on the pod or in the Discord.
Done deal.
Okay.
Done deal.
All right, there we go.
Easy. But your lack of confidence in your take here is showing through, and your tiny minuscule wager that you want to make here.
Hey Charlie, do you want to do a phone background, screen background bet again?
No, I do not.
I mean, here's the thing. I am less confident this year because it feels like he's got to win one eventually. But man, did I stick to my guns last season, and I think I had a majority following by the end of last season. Like everyone, it was, when did it, I'm trying to remember like when the tide flipped.
Because I think when he blew it at European Open.
No. That's when I was getting like just roasted, and everyone's like, "Oh, Josh is probably so happy right now." And then Calvin like started playing worse and like not even contending for a win, and that's when people started slowly like coming around to my side. And I think I finished with majority opinion last season that Calvin underperformed.
It's really interesting. Like, he needed one more win to like really cement himself as like having the best year, and like just never came.
Yeah, it didn't.
But I am all on the Calvin train. I think that you can't play this good this often and not win. Like, it's just the statistical anomaly that he didn't win, if anything.
Guess we'll see.
Okay, what do you got?
Man, I feel like I've got ones that just pair so nicely after I did my minor brand acquisition one. Let's talk about an MPO major winner. I think it's going to be a European.
Ooh.
There are, I like the both Worlds as well as Northwood Black for a potential European player. I think as well, then you add USDGC and then obviously the Beast in Europe. I mean, it's on a new course at Worlds that has never been played on the Pro Tour before. So I don't think the Americans who've played it for 20 years, like GMC, have that advantage. Champions Cup gets mixed up, and that one's, but Ledgestone to me and Northwood Black definitely feels much like Champions Cup, of course, that you would see more in Europe than you would, that's a little more in that theme. It is longer though. My big point, I really like the major slate this year for Europeans. They get better and better every year, and Niklas Anttila has demonstrated he has what it takes to hang with the best players at the majors, and that's not to mention the rest of the amazing European players that I think are in the pool and who could win it as well. I think I made this take last year as well, and I'm disappointed it didn't happen, but I'm gonna make it again. One of these years I'm gonna be right.
I think I'm also gonna let you count Simon.
Oh, okay.
Simon gets unfairly cut out of the European conversation because he's been living in the US.
Yeah.
And speaks good English, but he is a European.
He's German.
So you definitely get to have him. I'm looking to see how the European players played at Northwood this year.
Okay.
It's not super encouraging for you, Josh.
All right.
Although I'm pretty sure there were a lot of European players who were not in the field
because
they were over in Europe for
the
European swing. So it's misleading.
Okay. That's good to hear. I'm glad that it's not.
I feel like this is one of those takes that is just going to be wrong and wrong and wrong and wrong, because every single year it's European gonna win it, and they haven't even won an Elite Series.
I mean
Simon has.
Simon has. you got done giving me Simon.
I'm fraudulent.
Here's the thing. Simon took third at USDGC.
I know.
Niklas took seventh.
I know.
They're there.
Listen, I am a believer. I think that people are sleeping on Europe still.
I think so too.
In terms of where things are in Europe and how quickly people are getting good. Okay. My next one.
Yep.
Post-production continues its inevitable decline. It already doesn't matter. I can't remember the last time I watched post-pro coverage of a tournament. Now, I know that I'm probably in sort of an extreme live first camp, but many are coming to my
Given
side.
that you commentate it.
Well, yeah, but also just that's how I want to consume the sport. It's way more fun to watch it happen in real time.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to see, and I also think there's inevitably the Jomez hype is going to slowly die down, because it's just, unless they can really figure out a way to shake it up, new commentators, something new to get me excited about why I would want to watch Jomez, I think it's just slowly going to get fewer and fewer people excited. Now, it's still an extremely important vehicle for new interest acquisition in professional disc golf, and that has value forever.
Yes. But
I don't think that it's going to be the thing that is the main driver of conversation in the sport. And maybe it's already happened, but that shift will be very obvious now that the Pro Tour is investing more in its live platform.
Exactly. And now that the Disc Golf Network owns Jomez, there's just even less of an incentive to make Jomez more than what it is, which is just very accessible, friendly first take into professional disc golf, right?
Right.
There's no incentive. They are disincentivized to make it a more and better, to make it a better program targeted towards the most hardcore fans.
It's true,
because they don't make money on it. They don't get subscriptions from it, and so yeah, they are going to spend their money. They're going to invest more of their money in Disc Golf Network. Completely agree. Great prediction. Here's my last one. And I want to add some clarification. I don't know probably the best word. I think the MPO is going to develop a 2 to 3 player rivalry at the top this year.
Ooh.
And I want to explain kind of some things that
the end of the parody era.
A little bit, yeah. And I think you have too many good players who are going to show up. And so I'm not saying these 2 to 3 players, like in FPO, last year, my prediction was that they were going to win 18 out of the 21 events. That's not my prediction. I don't think that's true. But I think they're going to account for a lot of them. And the point is I think those 3 will always be in the mix to win. And they are going to be taking them from each other a lot of the time. And this is different.
All right. Hold on.
All right.
Who are the 3?
All right. I thought a lot about this. I've got my 3. I've got my 3. Ready? I'm giving it Calvin. I'd be crazy not to put him in that list.
Got to.
I'm going to put Gannon,
Okay.
and I'm giving it to Eagle.
Wow.
Eagle comes back, and this is where the big difference is. The problem with Gannon last season is that he would either win the tournament or he'd take 50th. I think Gannon, I think Eagle, they're both going to be the kind of guys who are only within a couple strokes of the lead with Calvin week in and week out. I give it to 3 players because then you're going to have 2 of the 3, and it's really going to feel like there's just like this trio at the top who are the ones you have to beat in order to get through. It's not final boss Calvin. It's like this trio that you have to get through week in and week out if you're going to win a tournament. I think Cole Redallen could win another tournament this year. I think Simon could win another tournament. I think Paul could win a tournament. Ricky, like there are lots of good players who I think will probably get a win. But you have to go through these 3. And these 3 are going to account for the most of them. They're going to account for the majority of the majors. That's it. We're going to have a rivalry at the top again. And I think it's those 3 players that are going to do it.
It would be something. It would be a lot of fun if we got
It'd be a lot of fun.
I think MPO has lacked for the like top players going head to head.
Yeah.
Like multiple times throughout the season and like starting to get some bad blood and all that.
Yeah.
You know, the Ricky Paul era was more compelling.
It was.
Than this sort of like, who's going to win? We don't know. Everyone has an equal chance in the top 10, you know?
Yeah.
And I would love to have some clarity like that. I think it would be good for the storylines. I don't know that I think it's going to happen though, but if Eagle comes back super healthy, that would just be so massive.
Eagle comes back super healthy. Gannon gets a new sponsor and rebrands and really
fresh start.
Yeah.
I love it. I hope you're right. I hope you're right. All right, my last prediction. I hinted at this earlier. Certainly, MVP rises to big dog status. What is big dog status? Big dog status is, well, you got Innova, you got Discraft, and you got MVP.
Okay.
I think market share, like obviously it's going to be very difficult to get any of that specifically, but I think in the market share universe, MVP is going to start to like really make a dent. You know, it's easy for a brand to come in and have hype because they sign a player or multiple players for a couple years. But, you know, Prodigy really established itself by making a big flurry of player acquisitions, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And now I think MVP, especially, but not exclusively if they sign Eagle, is ready to make that leap into being a brand that like is at the top of the sport conversation. And, how you want to define market share with like House of Discs, for instance, is going to be tricky because they have so many brands that constitute a larger piece of the overall pie. But I think MVP is, and maybe it already happened in 2023, but I think they're no longer like an up and comer. In 2024, they're going to become a heavyweight, an incumbent.
Yeah, I don't think it's. I don't think they've gotten there yet. It's like, because I don't look at MVP as being far and beyond Latitude or House of Discs or Prodigy even, right? Like, I mean, they're big, but I still like Innova, Discraft, all the other big players. And so I think this is a good prediction. I don't think it's happened yet.
Let me give you some stats.
Okay.
I've been over on the Infinite Discs blog trying to see when they've got their information about 2023 sales. They have some data about their top 50 putters sold in 2023.
Okay.
Number one by a distance was the Glitch. 7.4% of all putters sold on Infinite Discs website were Glitches this year.
That is crazy.
And MVP had 7 in the top 50, more than Discraft and Innova, who each had 6, and even more than Infinite itself, which had 4. So I think we're seeing that already. MVP. Now, of course, that's a big, heavy Simon effect. Right. No question.
But
the growth is happening.
Yeah.
And in another post, Infinite points out that Axiom sales were up 15% in 2023, and MVP sales were up 4.5%. This growth, I'm quoting the article, this growth is all the more impressive considering that for a large part of the year, MVP's most popular molds, especially the best-selling MVP Glitch, were often out of stock. The MVP family of disc brands really is the only brand that we still cannot keep in stock at will. Every time we attempt to make a restock order, the MVP order form remains very limited, and their fulfillment is not exactly next day. Now that's a problem for MVP.
That is a problem
that they need to solve. And if they're gonna, if these Eagle rumors are true, they better be ready to make enough discs.
That's true to an extent, because we talked about this during COVID. Didn't UC say that he wants to fulfill 90% of demand? Or we were talking about that back in COVID. We were talking about Discmania in particular, because Discmania was always releasing, and like people were livid that they couldn't get the Discmania drops.
The hype beast side of it.
That it will always be better. You would rather match 90% of demand than 110% where it sits on the shelves. It keeps it hyped. There's a perception of desirability. It makes people go out and buy them when they come back into stock. Now, too much, and people get frustrated and they start throwing other brands that they can get more easily. But if it's just difficult to get some of the premier molds, I don't think fulfilling only 90% of demand is necessarily a bad market move. I want to give you last thing on this that I want to add anecdotally as well.
Sure.
Traveling down to Utah for vacation, pass through Ogden, home of the fort. Whenever I pass through Ogden, I'll stop and play. It was great weather too, actually. Like I think it was like 55 degrees and no snow on the ground, so it was great.
Awesome, awesome winter day.
Yeah, awesome winter day. By the way, the plaque with the tee pad, like the drop zone tee pad where the holy shot happened.
Yeah,
nice touch.
You gotta look at it.
Yeah, we gotta throw it. It was fun. It was fun.
Nice. Did you make it?
No, I was within close? I was within 10 feet. I was 10 feet of I was in the bullseye. So
okay.
Yeah, it was good. It was pleased, but like, man, that'd be so. It also, the tree didn't have any leaves, so I could see the target.
Oh, sure.
All right, and there's not people, and so anyway, very different. But anyway, Utah, or the fort, has a disc shop on premise, and the pro shop, and we always go in and take a look. I would bet that somewhere between 25% to a third of the store is MVP discs now. And I don't know if they carried MVP prior to Worlds. And I mean, that makes sense given where it is, but they had everything. They had everything MVP there. And
yep.
I mean, they had other brands, but the MVP space was probably just as big or bigger than the Innova space or the Discraft space. And it was definitely bigger than every other brand after those two.
I mean, it makes sense also because it's like going to, I don't know, like it's like going to Paris and seeing the Eiffel Tower. When you go to the fort, you're going to go and you're going to buy a commemorative James Conrad holy shot disc.
Right. It does, but it's and like every disc store used to have a tenth of their store dedicated to MVP.
Right. And
you go into any store now and it's a quarter or 20%.
Yep.
Like they command as much space on shelves as Innova and Discraft did.
I mean, let me quote this article again from Infinite. The signing of Simon Lizotte last season appears to have been a hugely successful decision. All of the Simon line discs have performed remarkably well this year, and we even had people camping out in front of Infinite discs in hopes of getting one of our limited edition time lapses.
Camping out in front of disc shops.
Yeah. It's been a very, very good year. And are they going to go for the parlay with Eagle? That would be something else, man.
What MVP? What's it going to take for us to get numbers on Simon discs this year? I want to know how much money you made off of Simon and how that compares to what you're paying him.
Yeah, I mean, I would love that. I would also just love to know like their trajectory of like percentage growth.
Great.
From like 2018 to now. I'm going to genuinely like try to do an article about this because
come on the show.
Fascinating. Yeah, come on the show.
Come on the show. Come talk to us.
Open invitation.
We'll open invitation. We want to talk to you about this.
We'll do a whole show about MVP. We really will. I think we're there.
I think
it's
so
like
too.
It's one of the biggest business stories of the year for sure.
Yep, absolutely. So please.
All right, we're going to talk PDGA and Statmando, the acquisition and what it might mean for the future in our subscriber bonus segment, Inside the Circle. Get yourself a subscription at discgolf.ultiworld.com/subscribe. Join us in the Discord. A lot of fun. Josh, I'll see you there.